The Florida Panthers acquire former Flyers captain Claude Giroux before the trade deadline. They've made a few deals, and Armando Velez of Locked On Florida Panthers joins us to break it all down and what it means for this team as they gear up for the Stanley Cup playoffs.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. Gil Martin, glad to be with you today, and thank you for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. My pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Florida Panthers, Armando Velez. Armando, great to have you back.
It's great to be back, Gil. It's a pretty good weekend here in Pantherland, that's for sure.
I would think that it's been a pretty good season so far in Pantherland. The big fish, Claude Giroux, arguably the best offensive player available at the trade deadline. First of all, your thoughts on what the Panthers gave up to get Claude Giroux, and was that too high a price?
Let's backtrack a little bit right before the Claude Giroux deal. First, they traded Frank Vatrano to the New York Rangers in exchange for a fourth-round pick. That was more of a cap dump. And this was even before the injury to Aaron Ekblad, which him ended up being on LTIR, relieving $7.5 million of the cap. So that deal was first. Then Ben Chiarot, the Florida Panthers trade for Ben Chiarot of the Montreal Canadiens, give up a 2023 first, Theis Milanich, and that same pick that they got from New York to Montreal. So they used that as extra ammunition to fit under the cap, 50% retained. And then that was the move. And then the Florida Panthers weren't done. Here's the thing, though. They couldn't make a better – that deal for Ben Chiarot made their deal to the Philadelphia Flyers not the deal that Philly wanted. The rumors were always that Colorado had the better deal to Philadelphia that the Florida Panthers had. But, of course, the rumors saying of Claude Giroux saying the only place that he would waive his no-movement clause would be to go to Florida. And all the leverage was on Claude Giroux for that. So the Florida Panthers didn't have to give up really as much as I thought they were going to for someone like Claude Giroux. I mean, Owen Tippett, who is probably in need of a change of scenery. He was the guy that probably was most affected by the coaching change early on in the season. So now the Florida Panthers, they already traded 2022 and 23, their ones. So now they had to go way into the future in 2024 and the third round pick. The Florida Panthers did get some prospects back with a little bit of term on one of them. And they not numbers wise, they don't have the best numbers out in Lehigh Valley, but you just don't deplete your whole farm. That's the other thing about that trade. And there were some untouchables for the Florida Panthers, of course, Anton Lundell, Spencer Knight, Mackie Samoskevich, who's in his first season at the University of Michigan. So here's the thing that it gets a little troublesome for the Philadelphia Flyers in their return. All their first round picks that they traded in the next 3 years, all of them are top 10 protected. Buffalo's going to get their pick this year in the exchange for Sam Reinhart. But if somehow the wheels break off for the Florida Panthers next year and they end up in the top 10, that those picks end up being delayed. For the pick that would be sent to Montreal then would be moved back to another year. So that prospect, that pick that the Philadelphia Flyers could get for Claude Giroux might not even make it to the NHL, like maybe in 2028, 2029, around there. So the Florida Panthers putting that condition onto the pick, it just really helped them in this trade. And of course, the Florida Panthers, this is their time to go for it because they have a lot of cap troubles coming up in the future. The majority of Keith Yandel's buyout is still on the books, and next year will be the majority of it. Sergei Bobrovsky's contract is still large. First year of Alexander Barkov's deal coming in next season. Jonathan Huberdeau, if he gets extended, his first year of that deal won't be after 2023. So that's a good sign of that. So that's why the the Florida Panthers and Bill Zito decide this is the time now. We like our team, top of the East already. So adding those extra pieces. And Claude Giroux, it's a bonus to have Claude Giroux. They didn't need to get Claude Giroux, but having him there is just that added bonus and just adding to that firepower, because the Florida Panthers, they saw their division rival win twice in the last 2 years. They want to make sure that they bring a bit of a challenge.
So you talk about the two big additions, Chiarot and Giroux. Where do they fit into this lineup, and how do you see the chemistry? You know, who are they going to play with? What kind of role do you think they'll have?
Now things change a little bit with Aaron Ekblad's injury and him going on LTIR. So there's a possibility that we might have the Forsling Uyghur pairing from last year. And Aaron Ekblad, the injury that Aaron Ekblad sustained on his leg, it was the opposite leg that he broke last year. This news for Aaron Ekblad is even better than the ones that we got last year. So the chances are he could be returning for the playoffs, first of all. So we might see that Forsling Uyghur combination go back again in the playoffs. We could also see Ben Chiarot mixed in with either Radko Gudas or a Brandon Montour. If he was paired up with Radko Gudas, then that defensive pairing would just be a hitting machine back and forth. But if you also separate them on deep pairings too, you'll bring physicality on multiple lines on your second and third pairing. And Claude Giroux, I would like to see him try the first line first with Alexander Barkov. But if he is on the second line with Jonathan Huberdeau and Sam Bennett and they can make it work, then it's again, Claude Giroux is a bonus for this roster. And the top line of the Florida Panthers, as great as they are, one thing that has always been missing was a winger for Alexander Barkov this season, because there's always been a different person every single night. Anthony Duclair seems to have solidified his place on the second line on the right wing. So there is where you can where you could finagle a little bit with the lines, and it's just a perfect situation for the Panthers.
What is your biggest concern about this deal? Is it the long-term ramifications, like 5 years down the road when you have 3 years without a first-round pick, that eventually this comes back to bite the team a little bit?
It's more like the short term, really. Even a year like next year, where Bill Zito, if depending on what happens, whether they win a cup or not, that could determine how aggressive they go even next year, because they have at that time, by the time next year's trade deadline comes around, they'll already have 2 first-round picks surrendered. So what else are they going to be able to give if they want to go in the route of buying again? So that's a question that they need to ask themselves. So that is a concern. That's why, once again, this is why you have to go for it this year and try to win this year. This is the time for them to go for it. And another concern is really the health of the Sergei Bobrovsky right now. The Florida Panthers just came off a 4-game West Coast trip. In the first game, he was on the bench and he took a puck to the mouth and had 17 stitches. Didn't play the rest of the road trip. Spencer Knight looked outstanding after being up and down in the minors this season, but he won two out of the 4, and one of them was a shootout loss. So 5 out of a possible 8 points for the most recent road trip for the Panthers. So the Florida Panthers don't play again until Thursday, so the Panthers might be looking for a goaltender, a third goalie. Don't know yet. The goalie that I would like the Florida Panthers to trade for is possibly Anton Forsberg of the Ottawa Senators. He's another expiring deal. And the Florida Panthers, with all of these deals that they've gotten, they made sure that all of them were expiring deals, including their most recent trade in Robert Haig of the Buffalo Sabres, who they traded a 6th-round pick for. And that 6th-round pick for the Panthers was the pick that they got from Calgary in the Sam Bennett deal. So they're mixing and matching all these picks and using them as moving them around to get the players that they want.
Busy time in Florida. Armando, why don't you tell our listeners and our viewers where they could find you on social media and where they could find the podcast?
They can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. And let's enjoy this ride. That's all I gotta say. Let's enjoy the ride and follow along. And as the Florida Panthers are hoping to win their first playoff series since 1996.
It should be a fun ride. And thank you again, Armando. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Gil.